Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling tonight's meeting to order. On Tuesday, July the 11th, 2023, it is 5 o'clock. Let the record show that Council Member Alvarez will not be attending tonight's meeting. We will have the invocation by Mr. Don Smith, and I will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us bow our heads. Lord, thank you for all you do with us. We are truly blessed to live in a country that has so many freedoms. But at times, we are afraid to attempt what God wants us to do because we feel incapable, unworthy, or worry about what people think. Remember, He is the one who gives us the strength and authority to do what He asks us to do. Guide the City Council tonight as they do the city's work, and let us remember the problem is the problem, not the person that presented it. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Would you all please join me in honoring our nation's flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Council, can I get a motion to approve the approval of the agenda? Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member Board.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. We will now have our citizen petition. Each individual have 4 minutes to speak. Madam Secretary.
CP 23016, Patsy Bracy, naming Elms Road intersections of W.S. Young and Tremere in memory of Pastors Terry and Jan Wiley.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Yes, ma'am, you can approach. You have 4 minutes.
Good afternoon, council members, mayor, and attorney. I'm Patsy Bracy. I've been a member of Grace Christian Center for 30 years now. We had the honor a couple of weeks ago of having our mayor there. We certainly appreciate you coming. 9 years ago, the Grace Christian Center lost its pastors, Terry, Jan Whitley, and Steve Timberman, in a tragic accident. We lost our pastors, our best friends, our mentors, and our leaders. I'm asking that I would be more fitting that the street that runs in front of Grace Christian Elms Road should have a dedicated marker in their memory. I'm asking the city council to pay this same respect to my pastor as they did Pastor Holcomb, because they were best friends of the Whitleys. They had breakfast every morning together. I'd like for their memory to go on, and I would like for you to consider this when you make the decision. I know there's a process, and you'll have to educate me on that, but I appreciate your time for allowing me to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Bracy, there is a process for it, but I do know that Christian House of Prayer, they purchased the signs. So if you will get with our city secretary. She should be able to guide you in the right direction. No problem. Madam Secretary.
CP 23017, Jonathan Okray, responsibility and duty of the city to inform the city council.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Okray? Mr. Okray? Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, Council, and City Manager, I'm here to speak with you about the duties and responsibilities of the City Manager to inform the Council. Let's do a review. Charter, Article 4, Section 45(5), the City Manager shall be responsible to the Council. To that end, the City Manager shall be required to perform such other duties as may be prescribed by the Charter or required by the Council, not inconsistent with the Charter. Resolution 18-05 of 2018, City of Killeen Governing Standards in its Governing Standards and Expectations, Section 120A, City Council Agenda. The City Manager is responsible for creating, processing, and distributing the agenda and agenda material for the City Council meetings. Section 180, D4 is decorum. Section 5-120A is general provisions. On June 27, I signed up to speak about RS 23094, a resolution that ratified an agreement with Shields Winnups for legal services. The evening of June the 25th, I prepared a memorandum regarding RS 23-094 and emailed it to the City Manager, anticipating that I would not finish reading it in the time allotted. On June 27, during sign up for public comment, I provided the City Secretary with a printed copy of the memorandum to make copies for the Council. On June the 28th, while visiting with the city, I was told that copies of my memorandum for RS 23-094 were being made for distribution to the Council. Another matter was incident to my visit. In light of emailing the City Manager my memo regarding RS 23-094 and providing a copy of it to the City Secretary at the time of citizen comment sign-up, the looks of bewilderment on your faces, the glances towards the City Manager when asked by a show of hand, had you had the opportunity to view my memorandum regarding RS 23094. In the light of the brief conversation had about copies of my memorandum regarding RS 23-094, the City Council, after open and closed session, considered and then voted on RS 23-094 5-1. In recent memory, this is the second time that the Council has not been adequately informed by the City Manager. In light of an at-large council member resigning, the City Manager knew beforehand that the council member would tender their resignation. How did the City Council even have enough already sworn members to constitute a quorum? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Citizen comments, 4 minutes with 1 minute time allotted for City Council to respond with a statement or explanation without engaging in dialogue. Melissa Brown. Melissa Brown. Melissa Brown. Micah Fornino. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening. With respect to the invocation, the problem is the problem? No, the problem here is a specific person. That person being Kent Cagle, our city manager. I brought this up before. This is just a matter of record. This man was fired for cause from the city of Leander. When he was informed by the previous mayor, or a previous mayor of the city of Leander, that he was going to be fired, his on-record comment to the press was, "You can't do that." Well, if you're a city manager in a format such as we have, council can do whatever they wish to do. You, sir, don't have that right to that assertion. Let's dial the clock back even further. When you were the city manager of Duncanville, Duncanville was sued by the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity folks, the Department of Justice, federal suit. Why? Because you presided over a city that had at least one department that was rampant with sexual harassment complaints, so egregious, I'm not even going to repeat them here. But if anybody wants to ask me where my source information is, this is a settled case. Okay, so this is not in dispute. Several complaints from several employees while you were city manager of Duncanville. Several complaints went to you, sir, and you did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I submit to this council and everybody listening in this room that Mr. Cagle has a pattern, a displayed behavior, almost on reflex, that he doesn't answer to anybody. So is it any surprise that an email, regardless if he was the only recipient, that he didn't feel it necessary to forward that email to our mayor? A simple point and click, forward to the mayor pro tem. No, you're not elected, sir. You're the hired help. You're here by the invitation of the council with our approval of the members of the council. The problem is you, sir. Time after time, when we get up here to speak, a lot of what we're speaking on are due to efforts that you take. This is all tied in together. Right? You, sir, have a demonstrated pattern of either willful negligence or culpable inefficiency. I'm not sure which. Might be both. That right there, your history, that cannot be in dispute. It is a matter of record. Okay? Folks will call me names. They'll say I'm wrong. Oh, I'm attacking you. I'm sorry. All I'm doing is detailing the record, which seems to have a pretty good effect when I'm up here. If I start to tell people who and what people are, especially if it's on our dime. So I would recommend, I would strongly suggest, in the fullest possible, that Mr. Cagle be either disciplined far beyond a strongly worded letter of reprimand, or just remove him, because his pattern, professionally and to an extent personally, are antithetical to the goals and mission of the city and what we want to get done. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Sagari, oh, you don't. Councilmember Boyd, do you have anything you want to say? You don't. All right, we can move on. Consent agenda. Council, you have 3 times each to speak for 3 minutes. Madam Secretary.
MN 23015, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of June 13, 2023. RS 23106, consider a memorandum resolution accepting approximately 1.395 acres of parkland dedication being out of the C.T. Berlin survey, abstract number 137, generally located on the east side of East Tremere Road and north of Andalusia Lane, Killeen, Texas. RS 23107, consider a memorandum resolution approving an engineering procurement and construction agreement with Amoresco, Inc. for an airport terminal program solar project at the Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport in the amount of $7,018,065.27.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Can I get a motion in a second? Mayor Pro Tem.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
You move that we approve the...
That we approve and accept the consent agenda.
You move to approve that we accept the consent agenda. Councilmember Boyd.
Second.
Thank you both. All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Motion carried 5-0. ordinance. Council, you have 3 times each to speak for 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready.
OR 23012, consider an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2023, for capital projects. The caption of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Killeen, Texas, authorizing the issuance and sale of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2023, levying an ad valorem tax and pledging certain surplus revenues in support of the certificates, approving an official statement, a paying agent registrar agreement, and other agreements relating to the sale and issuance of the certificates, and ordaining other matters relating to the issuance of the certificates."
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good afternoon, Ms. Tanglein.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. This is the certificates of obligation. We have a couple of new slides that we presented last council meeting. So I'm going to go through really quick. This is the background. On April 25th, the City Council approved proceeding with the issuance of the certificates of obligation. On June 21st, the rating calls for the COs were held. On June 29th, the official statement distributed to bidders. On July 11th, that's today, the bids for the COs received, and City Council will have to consider an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the COs. And then on August 2nd, it's the estimated closing date and funds delivered. This is the priority project list. And then this is the bid. We have our bond counsel, Barb Fowler, here, and also our financial advisor, Dan Whitmiller, for any questions, but Mr. Whitmiller is going to go through the next 2 slides.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Dan Wegmiller with Specialized Public Finance. Just the next 2 slides real quickly present really good news for the city. This is the results of the bids received this morning on the $32 million worth of projects the city authorized us to go out for bids and interest. The 12 bids is outstanding. It's a very, very strong number of bidders who have submitted bids that were required at 10:30 a.m. this morning. As you can see, FHN Financial Capital Markets was the low bidder at 3.871463%. They were covered by Key Bank Capital Markets, which was very tight, 3.878405%. So we've checked and verified all the bids. Go on, you have JP Morgan, Hilltop Securities, RW Baird, Wells Fargo, BOK Financial, which is out of Oklahoma and Dallas, Raymond James, Jefferies, UMB Bank, Messero, and TD Securities. Again, very strong competition for your bonds, for your certificates that you're selling, and very competitive low interest rates for the city on these projects. Part of that outcome, as we talked about last week, was the bond rating upgrade that the city received from Standard & Poor's. As Judith mentioned last week, that in 2017, the bond rating was taken from AA down to AA minus. What the rating takes into consideration financial performance, management, debt position, as well as the economy. Those are the 4 factors. This rating is great feedback for you all, but it's really what's utilized by those 12 bidders to decide whether or not they want to buy your certificates of obligation. They're taking Standard & Poor's, who reviews it on an independent basis and publishes this rating. They, as we mentioned last week, took you from AA minus back up to AA. They noted in their rating, and I apologize for the small print, but they noted that the movement to AA reflects the broad and diverse taxpayer base supported by Fort Hood and the I-35, I-14 corridor between Waco and Austin. Maintenance of very strong available reserves supported by positive operating results. Strong financial management practices. Stable economic growth. Manageable debt burden and well-funded pension plan.
As was mentioned last week, we spent about an hour on the phone with Standard & Poor's, provided them a lot of information, and so that's what they used for the basis to take you from the AA minus back up to the AA. The far right-hand side shows that is just 2 notches from the highest rating you can possibly achieve. So again, that's what factors into all the bidders having interest in buying your certificates of obligation today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Judith, but just let you know that this winning bid has been put into the ordinance, and that's what's completed all the blanks, as well as adjusting the par amount to account for premium. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
I just wanted to add really quick, you just see the 30 million over here, it's because the issue is a premium. That means we will get 32 millions whenever we receive the cash. And our recommendation as a city council approve the ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2023 for capital projects. Do you have any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. No, ma'am. Council, Mr. Cagle will be sending us the slides. Councilmember Boyd, do you have any questions? Okay.
No, I was going to make a motion, Madam
Oh,
Mayor.
please do, sir.
Okay. Make a motion to approve OR 23-012.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
I second that.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any discussion on the item? All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. The next item we have is the budget. Council, you have the opportunity to speak 3 times each for 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready.
RS 23110. A, receive fiscal year 2024 proposed annual budget and overview provided by the city manager. B, set the date of August 1st, 2023 to hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 annual budget. C, receive fiscal year 2024 proposed capital improvement program overview.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Cagle.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and council, we have a fairly long presentation tonight. Obviously, we don't have to act on this right away, so you've got the complete budget document and the CIP document at your desk, so we've got a lot of time to go over this. As you know, we built this based off of some direction that we received in February, then we gave you a preliminary look in May, and now we have a proposed budget that has a few minor changes from what you saw in May. To start off, remember the date. So today, we're delivering the budget to you and with this presentation. And then the next one is, in the past, sometimes we've had and sometimes we haven't had a special city council workshop. If you want to have an additional one on the budget, July 18th. Then the public hearing is scheduled. The one of one, only reason we'd have 2 is if you decide to make changes at that public hearing. Then we need to set the proposed tax rate by taking a record vote on August 1st. Then we'll talk about this more in the future, but if there is to be a bond election in this November, the deadline to call that would be August 21st. Then if we have another public hearing because of changes, that would be September 5th. And then September 12th would be the date to adopt the budget and the tax rate. So let's talk about some of the big economic indicators before we get into the numbers. As you know, we're a growing city. We estimate our population today to be about 163,000. This is a measure we'll talk about several times. Are the number of employees we're adding keeping up with the growth? If you look at our employees per 1,000 population, based on the budget that's before you now, we're at 8.3 employees per 1,000 population. If we do get the SAFER grant later in the year and add about 24 additional positions, that would put us at 8.28 employees per 1,000 population. Our median household income is a little over $52,000. tax-supported debt per capita. So once again, this takes into account the growth in our population, but you can see this year in '23, this includes the $32 million in bonds that we just discussed, and then next year, based on population growth, that drops to $975 a person. We try to benchmark on some of these. Are our basic benchmark cities: Lubbock, Garland, Grand Prairie, Amarillo, Denton, Mesquite, Waco, Abilene, Round Rock, Odessa, Beaumont, Temple, and our neighbors, Temple, Coppers Cove, Harker Heights, and Belton. Employees drive expenses, and you'll see that the next one, we're about the same position when you look at employees per thousand population, or if we look at expenditures per capita. You can see we're towards the very bottom of these survey cities. One thing we have done to make these numbers a little more comparable, a few cities have electric utilities, and that really skews the numbers, so we've made sure any city that has electric utility, we took it out to make it more comparable. None of these are perfect. Some people contract out solid waste, some people do it in-house like we do, so there are some other variations, but the really big one that skews the numbers are electric utilities. When we compared to our other cities on medium household income, we're about in the same place as we are expenditures per capita, employees per 1,000. You can see we're in about the same position. Then when we go to the general fund, you can see that our proposed budget is balanced with revenues of $120 million, based off total expenditures $120 million, and a fund balance in excess of the 18 to 22% requirement. A lot of changes, major revenue changes in the general fund. Our sales tax numbers, receipts have gone up. I'll put that in a little bit of context later. It's nice, but it should be a lot better. Property tax revenue increase. This is based on, and I'll get into detail on this as well, this is based on 1/4 cent
Mr.
decrease.
Cagle,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
apologize. What book are you in?
Well,
Are you just doing an overview?
I'm doing an overview,
Okay,
but it
he's
would
doing
be
an
the big one. That has all the detail. Yes, sir. But these slides are not in that document. 6.8 million in property tax revenue with 1/4 cent property tax rate decrease. ARPA funding drops. We'll talk about this in a moment, some changes in the rules on how we can use ARPA money. We are one of the few cities lucky enough to receive some reimbursement from the disabled veterans exemption, and that number from the state dropped by $630,000. And our interest income was up $650,000 over the prior year budget. If we want to compare ourselves to all cities in the state, there are a lot of different rates on sales tax, some at 1 penny, some all the way up to 2 pennies. We're at 1.50 pennies, but to compare it, you take what does 1 cent of revenue per person generate in a single year? And for us, 1 penny per one person is $146.97. But you look at the statewide average, and that's about $217. We're well below the statewide average on what 1 penny of sales tax generates in a year. If we were just at the statewide average, we could fund every single one of the unfunded supplements that are in your budget. You've got 3 documents there with you, the operating budget, the capital budget, and then we have another list of all the requests by department heads that were not included in the budget. And once again, that's worth about, if we could get to the statewide average for 1 penny per capita, that's a little over $10 million. So now let's talk about the tax base. Our market value tax base is $15.4 billion. And then you take a lot of different things out to get down to your adjusted taxable value of about $10 million in a total levy, that's the taxes to be paid on operations and maintenance and debt service fund of $65 million. If you look at this historically, from 2010 to 2024, you see a number of numbers. Our tax rate that peaked in 2015 to 2020 at 74.98 cents, and decreased it in this proposed budget down to 62.08. And that's where the tax levy comes in at $65.3 million. Now, you saw the column on exemptions. We're one of the few cities that has an exemption to this magnitude, the disabled veterans exemption of 54% of our total exemptions. Most other cities have the remainder of these, obviously churches, school, university property, and then a number of minor tax exemptions. Very few cities, except some of our neighbors, have exemptions of the magnitude of the disabled veterans. And I'll get into a little bit of detail on that. So this chart shows the total disabled exemption value. You see it started back in fiscal year 2008 at about $50 million. Today it's $1.75 billion that's exempted. And this year that number increased by $292 million. And compare that to the taxable value that was added to the rolls from new construction. That was $221 million. So the increase in the veterans exemption is greater than the increase in new construction. And that's been the case since 2020. You have to go back to 2019 before the new taxable value was greater than the addition of the disabled veterans exemption. We've been asked repeatedly why we continue to talk about this. It's because the city of Killeen, Harker Heights, Nolanville, Copperas Cove, and a few other cities in the San Antonio area are disproportionately impacted by this. The other exemptions that we talked about, whether it's religious institutions, schools, universities, are pretty well about the same percentage throughout the state with a few variations. But the state granted a statewide exemption, but only a few communities are forced to pay a heavy burden on it. So we have to continue talking about it. These are very significant numbers. To put it in a different way, we say now that almost every other new home built in Killeen has an exemption, and you can almost say tax-free, because once the exemption starts, whether it's 20, 40, 50%, eventually ends up at 100%. So if we go back to 2021 and look at one portion of one new subdivision, you can see that the properties in blue don't have exemption. The properties in white do. The properties in black are owned still by the developer or the home builder. So now let's move forward to 2022. You'll see there's fewer undeveloped lots, and we're at about 55% of the homes have DV exemptions. Now that this portion of this subdivision is built out, you can see it settled in at about 58% of the homes in this new subdivision have a veterans exemption. So we're a fairly fast-growing city. All of the folks that live in the homes with exemption, I have no evidence that shows that they demand any different level, greater or less in city services than any other resident. So we are having to serve those people, but without the revenue to do so. All right, so now we go to the total tax rate. As I said, it's a very, very minor increase of 1/4 cent from 62.33 to 62.08. You can see also the change in operations went up a little, the change in debt went down a little bit. We've seen this in a different manner, but our tax rate history, you can see we were right here at 74.98 for a number of years until we hit 2021 and started having the ability to decrease the tax rate. A lot of changes in the budget, some of the major expense changes. Now, this is not the total that we send to the tax appraisal district. This is just the increase, $56,000 increase there. Now, to the HOP, this is a new number. We haven't had the HOP in our budget in several years. And when we did, it was at about $200,000. So this is still not a firm number. It's in discussion, but it does include an additional $150,000 from the proposal that we had in May. Same thing with KEDC. This is an increased amount over the amount in the current budget of $139,946. As you know, we're continuing to move mowing out of solid waste. It doesn't belong there. Next year will be the last time we have to talk about this. Then IT is a similar thing. We're having to spend more money in IT, but we had been putting those costs off on solid waste, water and sewer, drainage, the other funds, and we're trying to get it back to where it is supposed to be. So that, just trying to get the number back where it should be, that was $198,000. Our general liability and property insurance went up $147,000, and we're increasing the amount we're putting towards code enforcement abatement and disposal. That's not employees, that's cleaning up properties or tearing down structures. And then we talked about what was not in the budget. A few things were added to the budget. One position in the police department, records management system manager. As you know, we're finally getting a new records management system, and we're going to have someone run it. And so there's the position for that. Pay increase for the paramedics that ride the box, and then increase in fire operations overtime. Those were the three major additions to the budget for $751,000. The big increases were for existing employees, the compensation, 7% COLA and step increases on civil service side, and the other employees, civilian employees, 6%. Now, here's another change that occurred since we talked to you in May. Earlier this year, the federal government said the COVID crisis was over and we could no longer continue using ARPA money to pay police and fire. So we had expected in this budget we were going to have to absorb about 50 cents from the initial pay increase we gave with ARPA money, and that was going to be $650,000. But we had to do it all. We were going to take 50 cents this year, 50 cents next year. We had to do the whole dollar this year, and that added a total of $1.3 million, but an increase of $650,000 from what you saw in May. And that's the reason. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kager, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Did you say because of ARPA funding, federal government changed?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. So when the federal government declared the COVID crisis was over, the rules changed and we could no longer use ARPA money to pay police officers and firefighters. So we had planned on using that money all the way through December of '24. And as you know, we gave the pay increase at the beginning, and then we planned to step it down and eventually wipe it out by December of 2024 with general fund money. Well, we had to move that up. We didn't want to take that pay away. We said from the very beginning, we're going to give this pay increase and we're going to work it into the general fund up until we do it completely in December of 2024. Well, we had to do it now, mid-year in the budget.
And that'll always be in our budget moving forward.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And this, it's not a as you said, it will always be in the budget, but we have built the budget where there is ongoing revenue to cover that ongoing expense.
Okay, thank you.
And so you add those up, and that's $9.1 million. Just to give you an idea of the police officer pay plan, this is different than the civilian side. On the police and fire side, they have steps. So these steps include the 7% increase, but an officer going from 1 to 2 also gets an additional 3% or so, going from step 1 to 2, in addition to the 7%. What happens on the civilian side, we don't have the annual steps. It's only the cost of living on the civilian side. And then same thing on fire. The first year it's $60,000, and at 18 years it tops out at $82,000. Not included in the budget. Fire Station 4, 24 positions. We have applied for a SAFER grant. We expect to hear yes or no before the end of this calendar year, hopefully well before the end of this calendar year. If we don't get it, we have other backup plans that we'll work on to get it into the next year's budget. But we're still hopeful on that. Then there were 43 other positions requested that were unfunded, and then there were other unfunded decision packages of about $3.6 million that were not included in the budget. So a total of 67 positions in about $10 million. And this is what I talked about earlier. If our sales tax was just at the state average, we'd have enough money to cover every one of those packages. Or if the state was reimbursing us 100% for the disabled veterans exemption, that's about $9 million.
So, Mr. Kagan, for
Yes, ma'am.
Fire Station number 4, and we expect for it to be completed.
Oh, well, we haven't kicked off construction yet. We expect to award the bids, Chief, November, December? Yeah.
Because if we do not get the grant, we have 24 employees, we're going to still need them.
Yes, ma'am, and we're prepared. We have backup plans for that.
Okay.
So, and the ability to work it into future budgets. One more time, since these 24 positions are an ongoing expense, you have to cover it with ongoing revenue. And we'll be prepared to do that if we don't get the grant.
Yes, sir, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Then on to the Water and Sewer Fund. The big picture, it's a balanced budget, revenues of $44 million and expenses of $46 million, but these are transfers. They're one-time expenses. The ongoing expenses are balanced in the budget. And our fund balance is at 21%, so well above the minimum of 18%. Major revenue changes. We are proposing a residential rate increase of $1.50 in water and sewer on the minimum. And we've been going through a series of proposed commercial rate increases. This would be year 2 of 5. So the residential increase of $1.50 results in a little over $1 million in revenue. The commercial increase, year 2 of 5, is $320,000, and the sewer revenue increase of about $1 million. Now, major expense changes. We'll go through a couple of slides on this. I'm not blaming WCID. They have strong cost increases too, and they have to pass those along. But between BRA and WCID, there's about $877,000 in cost increases that are passed on to us. The 6% cost of living adjustment at $393,000. And then capital projects, more funding for water and sewer line replacement at $793,000. We did recommend 7 full-time positions in the water and sewer fund, water maintenance crew of 4 employees and equipment, and 3 customer service representatives. I'll get into a little more detail on that in a moment, for a total of 7 positions for $512,000. Another look at our rate increases from WCID. As we see in a lot of things with the inflation that's happened the past year or so, you'll see their rate increases have been a lot stronger than they have been in the past. Just one example that they like to use, I believe the cost of chlorine has doubled in the last year, and they use a lot of that product. This gives some detail on the rate increases. So the current amount, the minimum on sewer is $19.26. This is the base charge, and with a $1.50 increase, it would go to $20.76. In a moment, I'll show you the impact on the total utility bill. This does not include any volumetric rate, so the minimum on sewer, the first 3,000 gallons are included, and then if you use over 10,000 gallons, the calculation stops. So it's between 3,000 and 10,000, it's $3.80 per 1,000 gallons. Then we go to water residential, and that's $1.50 as well. The base rate going from $13.54 to $15.04, and that includes the first 2,000 gallons. So after that, between 2,000 and 15,000, you're charged $3.38 per 1,000. That's not changing. 15 to 30,000, you're charged $4.03 per 1,000, and over 30,000 is $4.81. These show the commercial rate increases with on sewer, the minimum going up $1.50, and then the $1.50 on the base, and then we have the other rate increases on commercial, year 2 of 5. Now, if we look at our utility bill, it's not just water and sewer. It includes solid waste, street maintenance fee, and drainage fee. So the current amount is $85.72, and with the increases of $1.50 on water and sewer, it'd go up by 3. So based on 5,000 gallons of water usage per month, you would go up, that's your bill from 85 to 88. It wouldn't change, this $3 wouldn't change no matter how much water you use, because we're only talking about the base rate. It didn't change any of the volumetric rates. Now, to put that in comparison to our neighbors, so this is based on a water and sewer monthly bill. That's all we did, because it starts getting more difficult throwing the other things in, getting all those numbers. But water and sewer monthly bill, the benchmarking comparison, you can see our benchmark cities. Now, we did note a couple that we have either read about or they have told us they're considering a rate increase. That's Copperas Cove, Abilene, and of course, we just have a proposed one in this budget. I just read in the Waco paper today, they're considering a pretty strong increase. And I would be willing to bet that the majority of these cities are having some sort of rate increase. It just hasn't been announced yet, because everybody's being hit pretty hard by inflation. But this is our 5,000 gallons water and sewer bill based on the rate increase. And most of these are the current year rates without their rate increase in it. So even given that unfair comparison, we're still almost at the bottom. We are adding 3 customer service reps. We haven't added a customer service rep in utility accounting in, I think it was before 2010, the last time we added one. And in 2010, we had a little over 40,000 accounts, and today we have almost 55,000. What's not included, there were 5 positions that were not funded, that were requested, that were not included in this budget. Then we're well over halfway there. Onto the solid waste fund, that revenues of $24 million versus the expenditures of $24 million, a balanced budget with a strong 22% fund balance. Major revenue changes. No rate increase in residential. This is just due to the $460,000 due to the growth in customers. We didn't show you the same thing on water and sewer, because you can add a lot of customers in one year, but if you have a very wet year, your revenue might go down. It's very weather dependent. The solid waste is pretty steady. When you add customers, they stay, or someone moves in. If they move out, someone else moves in, they stay. This is year 3 of 3 of a commercial rate increase that will add $660,000. We've increased the drop-off fees at the transfer station to non-residents, which would add $390,000, and then transfer in from the general fund for mowing for $500,000. Major expense changes. These are huge. The cost it takes to take the solid waste we drop off at the transfer station to the landfill in Temple, and then the cost to dump at the landfill in Temple is going up about $1 million. We contract out, and we'll bid it out, the transportation to and from the transfer station to the landfill. We do the best we can on the landfill, but there's not a lot of landfills out there to have a bid for. So, of course, fuel's gone up, and then the 6% COLA for increases of about $1.6 million. 8 positions were requested that are not included in the budget. And you can see that the residential rate does not go up, and this is the increase in the commercial rates. These are the tipping fees at the transfer station. Per ton, Killeen residents pay 61.6. Non-residents under this recommendation would pay 98.56. Another way to look at this, the line, this line works on this axis. It shows our cost for our transportation and disposal cost versus on this column, the bars. Yes. Yep. Oh, forward. Right here?
Yes, sir. Why is that, did you say why?
Right here? Because we were, and I think we still are probably, even with this, we have a very expensive asset to maintain, and we were basically giving away our services to non-residents by charging them the same amount as Killeen residents. So we made a pretty good increase in the previous budget, and I suggest we continue doing this year after year until we see some sort of change in the flow of solid waste from non-residents. So while this shows that residents get or pay $61.60 per ton, they also get free every month, and I forget the exact amount, Mr. Reynolds? 500 pounds a month free to Killeen residents. So as you know, as you go in out there, you go on the scale, and whatever you've got, you dump it off, they weigh you coming out, and you pay the difference. Same thing with non-residents. And I would recommend, well, depending on what happens in this year's budget, I doubt at all that this rate will slow down the flow of solid waste into the transfer station, but we'll take a look. Yes, ma'am. And that increase, well, I've got to go back to, that's about $390,000, the rate increase to non-residents. So we haven't changed the residential cost to our residents for residential pickup since we went in 2015 to 2016, right there. It's been the same. Yes, ma'am. The Drainage Utility Fund is very straightforward with revenues of $5.2 million, expenditures of $5.2 million. It's balanced with a strong fund balance. Aviation funds, this is a little bit different. In the budget, looks like it's unbalanced with revenues of $4.1 million, expenses of $4.6, but these are one-time expenditures, capital outlay. We're still have barely in excess of our 18% fund balance requirement. Now, what we're doing on some of these capital projects that we're spending on, we're working really hard to reduce the operating cost at the airport, and then we'll talk about some ways to increase revenue out there as well going forward. The Street Maintenance Fund. Now, this is important to note. This looks like we are hanging on to a lot of money because we're bringing in $9.8 million and only expect to spend $6.1 million. It's because these expenditures are for ongoing maintenance, and we're saving money here for the major capital expenditures as we replace, the engineering's underway, as we replace Gilmer, Bunny Trail, Watercrest, Stagecoach. I'm probably leaving something out, but the debt issue that we had last year for road reconstruction won't cover all that, so then we plan to start covering those capital expenses with the excess revenue in this fund. And even between the debt issue last year and this money, we're still going to have to stretch out Stagecoach. When it comes time to bid that out, we'll have to do it in phases. But one other thing, we are planning on increasing the amount that we're spending on an ongoing basis on the streets, and primarily this will be in overlays. The current budget had $5.6 million, and we're increasing that amount to $6.1 million. The Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund, this is another fund that looks a bit unbalanced, but I'll show you why it's okay. Our revenues of $3.9 million versus expenditures of $4.1. We still have a very, very strong fund balance at 32% of expenditures. And the reason for this negative number is some large capital outlay, one-time capital outlay. We do expect to get $840,000 in new revenue from the short-term rental ordinance. The 6% COLA cost, we should be increasing our advertising and marketing to comply with state law. This number was a bit bigger when we showed you in May, but since we had the presentation, we found out we can use some of we reduced that number and added it to the rodeo to increase the level of competition, to put that rodeo on some form of television. And when you increase the level of competition, you increase the number of people that come from out of town to stay in hotels. So I think we can really help take the rodeo to some new levels and bring in more money to the city. Then some major upgrades to the KCCC, door replacements, replacing entirely the bathrooms, replace flooring. And the CVB plans on, instead of just waiting on other people to bring in events, to bring in their own events and cover those with revenue generated by those events. And then lastly, I'll end just to say, as I started, we formed this budget based on a number of factors. One, primarily on the input we received from the City Council back in February, but also on the adopted comprehensive plan. And out of that, between the comprehensive plan, the input in February, we came up with a short-term strategic plan. And you'll see in that large budget document that you have, you'll see these icons throughout there that talk about the 6 big ideas in the strategic plan and how we are linking it to the budget. And just to give you an example, this is a department, it'll have 23 accomplishments, 24 goals, and talk about which one of the 6 big ideas that it addresses. And then these were the strategic issues from the City Council that you identified back in February. We were able to address almost all of them. When you look over at identified funding in this column, you can see how we addressed that issue. There's a couple. This one really doesn't have a cost issue. We weren't able to add more code enforcement officers, potential substations in neighborhoods, and an environmental specialist. We covered quite a lot in this budget. So to end that I'm happy to answer any questions, either tonight or all the way up through adoption. But tonight, what we have to do is set the date of August 1st, 2023 to hold a public hearing on the 24 annual budget. And thank you for your attention, and be happy to answer any questions.
As of now, I don't see anyone. Well, yes, I do. Councilmember Cigar.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I just want to say congratulations on presenting a balanced budget.
Thank you.
And people don't realize how important that is. I was at the end one time when we didn't get that, and the backlash and everything, so I appreciate that. And then everything else, I mean, it's great work. And, you know, it seems like we are receiving more revenue, but my question is, do you foresee us, because, you know, we always talk about the revenue we're losing and all that, and I think we've been talking about that for so many years. And, you know, every time we go to the state legislator, we know that doesn't happen.
Right.
And so I think it's probably time to ask that tough question, and it's like, what do we as a city need to do? Because we're going to have to probably in the future, as that continues to grow, and it is not the fault, and I just want to make sure that people understand that it's not the fault of our veterans, because we want to welcome them here, and they are spending it. So that's not what this fight is about. It's about the state legislator and what they did. They did a good thing, but we're at the bad end, and we have to, as a city, I think, ask that tough question and figure out how are we going to pay for that. You know, there's got to be some sort of revenue that we're going to have to create in order to cover that cost, and it's going to be probably similar to what we did with our street maintenance fee. That's something that we came up with in this council, most people there, and it's worked well. And so I think that, you know, that alone right there, you saw, I think in your presentation there, yeah, we have a fund balance of about $9 million right there. And over the years, and I think that kind of equates to what we're losing there on our state funds. But I think we need to start asking that tough question is, you know, what do we need to do as a council? We can't sit here and wait for the state, because I don't think, they may never do anything. And it's like, what do we need to do about that?
Yes, sir, I agree. A couple of things. Number one, you don't stop trying with the legislature, because in the House of Representatives, the bill that we supported, our neighbors supported, our representatives supported, received a vote, I think it was something like 134-9. That was significant support in the House of Representatives. We really got to focus on the Senate side now, and can't ignore the House. We've got to keep them educated, but I think we did a pretty good job on that. But having said that, you don't quit trying, but then you are correct in that we made a significant improvement to what we're putting on our streets. Now, this amount of revenues, you're correct, that's pretty close to the amount that we lose right now to the veterans exemption. But remember, the other thing we're having to do with this money is catch up on a lot of decades of where we weren't maintaining the streets properly. So, and that gets expensive. You know, the longer the cost to repair a street goes up exponentially, the longer you ignore it. And we're seeing that in some of the streets that we're having to totally remove and replace. A lot of the streets that we have done mill and overlay have done great. We have a couple that are already getting in bad shape again because it needs to be removed and replaced instead of just an overlay. And that's a lot more expensive. But we do have a revenue stream that will get that addressed. It's going to take some time, and I know it's frustrating to everyone. I say a lot of times that the road maintenance issue is solved. On the financial side, it's just going to take some time to catch up. But you're correct. Are there other things that we can look at to fund services that everybody pays into?
Yeah, and I just wanted to put that out there because I think we as a council need to seriously start considering that, what is our new revenue stream to cover this? Because that is not getting any lower, and it's not going to get any lower.
Yes,
We
sir.
already know that. So we need to start talking about that, whether it is in this budget, which I don't think it's going to happen, but here, somewhere in the future. And do we need to do something similar to what we did with our street maintenance to generate revenue to cover all those services? Otherwise, because I know the other part that you showed it is, we're understaffed as a city compared to other stuff. Our employees work hard, and, when I attend some of these meetings, it's always, the staff gets beat up a lot because they don't have enough staff on there. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and so council can start thinking about it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you. That was a very, very good point that Councilmember Segarra brought up. And there are some sister cities across Texas that are doing extremely well with generating alternative funds. One of the things that we have, of course, is our property tax. We know that we've got that challenge there that we face. But the sales tax, the hotel occupancy, that's a huge revenue source that I feel that we can work to expand or basically open our city for business, right? We need to find ways to be able to creatively compete with industry providers. I think what we've done with the rodeo is a wonderful, wonderful step in that right direction to increase that hotel occupancy tax, things like that. That's going to help us. It's another way that we can really generate resources for our city. It's happening all across Texas. We just need to start tapping into and thinking about it on a realistic long-term potential. I do have a question, though, with regards to WCID. Excuse me. The increase over the last 2 years was, I think it was 8%, or 8 cents and 9 cents, if I'm not mistaken, but it was significant.
That was percent. Yes,
Percentage,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, thank you. It was very significant, obviously. Now, there's some projections that are happening. Obviously, you're watching like nationwide trends, what's happening. There's forces that you mentioned earlier that kind of increase or affect those costs and charges. So, of course, supply costs, inflation, the weather anomalies, that we have here in Texas, drought. Are we tracking that and looking at, are we expecting, or do we have forecasts for the next couple of years as far as what that might look like for WCID rates?
Yes, ma'am. We have some ideas, and some of the things that you saw are some critical maintenance items that don't have anything to do with growth, and they need to be paid out of our rates. But some of them were capacity increases, and if there's a capacity increase, that's a high dollar project. WCID would issue debt, and then they charge back on a proportional basis all their customer cities to cover that debt service payment. I would suggest that it's time for us to look at the water impact fees. We need to refresh the study, add those new costs that we know are coming in, and that can be used to help pay for the increases from WCID that are capacity increases. I think that would be a big help. It also goes along with our comprehensive plan that says new growth ought to pay for itself. We've made good strides in that area, but it still doesn't pay for itself, but we're making progress. And I think taking another look at the water impact fees would be a good way to pay for some of those increases that we know are coming.
Okay. And then just back to the point that Councilmember Segarra was making, and then regarding the increases in our hotel occupancy, sales tax revenue, is there another area that maybe we should be looking at as far as if we wanted to start doing some research to figure out how we can generate those alternative resources for revenue? Do you have any recommendation for us if we wanted to start engaging in that a little more deeply?
Well, sales taxes are tough. I mean, there are a number of things going on now, a number of projects that will bring in more sales tax revenue. You always have to be careful when you have new projects come to town that are new retail. You can't count on 100% of that revenue being new because some other retailers may lose some retail, but the area is growing. So what you want to do is try to attract sales tax dollars into the city rather than having it going out of the city. So that's the number one thing I would say right now. And I sort of think from what I'm hearing, a project we're going to have over the next few months it would be to look at other areas where we can charge for service perhaps. There's a limited number of areas where we can do that, but we do need to take a look at that.
Thank you.
And I would also say, one more time back on the water and sewer, on the debt side, I don't have the chart here on water and sewer debt. It's a little different than the one on the general fund. It does start dropping off in a couple of years, and so it will be easier to layer in the new debt from WCID as our debt is falling off. And that's one issue I've had with this huge project over there on increasing production is that we don't really need it right now, and I don't know why we should be forced to pay for something before we need it. If there are other customers in the system that need it right now, we've got excess capacity, we can work something out. But if we can just delay that debt service a few years, we can have almost no rate impact. Now, there are some things that need to be done immediately, I get that. There's some critical maintenance projects that they're going to have to tackle.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Cagle, I'm looking at the budget and I'm trying to get an understanding. It's a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
When we look under the community development services, I'm trying to find that building that we've been looking at, that we've been adding to the budget. Is that under capital improvement?
Under the building downtown that we purchased?
Not the one downtown, not the Hacks, but the one where the service guys
The
work out of.
facility that.
Yes, ma'am.
sir.
The Parks Maintenance Facility?
It's on the park and maintenance, okay.
Yes, ma'am, and that's in the capital projects budget, and we'll show it
Okay.
to you in just a minute, but
Okay.
that's going to be funded from the debt issue that you just voted on tonight, the sale that happened today. The revenue is there for that facility, and
Okay.
and Ms. Snook has already been working on finding the right location, the right place to put it.
Okay.
So
And then-
you put the seal of approval on that
Yeah.
project on the revenue side tonight.
Yes.
And if you adopt the capital budget, then it's there.
Perfect, I can't wait to look at it.
Yes, ma'am.
The next one is on the community development services. That's where the custodians and person were coming back, that's the old cemetery building?
Community services, yes, ma'am, that's
Okay.
where our custodians are.
And so that's listed under the community development service, not under the capital improvement program. That's something totally, that's the budget.
Yes, ma'am, we don't have any plan to build a new facility at this point for
Right.
those people. That's not in there.
So what we were gonna do is the persons who worked in that building, we were just gonna take the whole building now. And, there was a half that was not being used. And
Right.
Am I on the right
No,
track?
ma'am, you're on the right track.
Okay.
But it's all being used now.
Okay.
So we have done that, but it's still not really enough space.
It's still not?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand as you speak and find your speaking points,
Yes, ma'am.
so I can mark them when I
Okay.
read later.
Mhm.
Thank you for a balanced budget.
Councilmember Boyd. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know it's one of your most recent, there were recommended funding improvements for the rodeo in
Yes.
relation to electrical. What other improvements were under there? It went pretty quick for me.
Here we go. So this is we're going to get fiber to the rodeo and the ability to add a large TV screen over there. That's what they say they have to have in order to get it. This is not going to be CBS Wild World of Sports, but it could be RFD TV, something like that. And that does draw a good rodeo audience. And these are things they need to be prepared to put it on TV.
Very good. I know last year was mentioned, I mentioned it last year, that we should take a look at improving the RV electrical out there behind the Civic Center, which is close to the rodeo grounds, for those who have RVs, the way you
Yes.
capitalize on that level of revenue as well.
We did take a look at that last year, and I can tell you, we'd have to do a fair amount of marketing to make it pay, but we do have a fairly significant fund balance. If that's something the council is interested in, I can get the cost, and that's something that would fit in this budget, because I don't remember the exact number, but I feel certain that would fit in this budget, because our minimum fund balance here is 18 to 22%, and we're at almost 33% right now.
Sure, I'm personally interested to see what those numbers might be. We have
Okay.
people using the Civic Center, we're doing carnivals over there. We've got the rodeo that's growing, and to have folks be able to use the RVs would be another draw to the area as well. So that's all I have.
We'll
Thank
do
you.
that.
Mr. Cagle, the last thing, as you look into your revenue, and I know with maintenance, we have to increase our fees, but I don't want the residents and the business owners to be our only source of revenue coming into the city, because they're taxed out on fees. I know there's other ways, but you shouldn't always look to them to help us get out of debt. I can understand the maintenance, I got the water and sewer, some things you have to do, but they are not the problem with veteran exemption. I mean, it is what it is. They served their time in big Texas. Austin said they deserve it. No fault to anyone. We just have to do better with our priorities, with our state representative, who has done a great job fighting, but he needs more than just him and Flores and Shine fighting for it. That's a concern. And, I'm going to go back to this. We had the discussion. The only thing, I just want it to be a top priority, if we have any revenue to spare. The screening for our paramedics, cancer, that is a top priority because of their profession. They go into fire. They are at a greater, over 120% chance of getting cancer. So I know it's not in this budget season. You talked to Chief, and he was okay with the priorities that you have in place. But to me, I will continue to state, as Council Mayor Pro Tem stated about the Park and Rec facility, as Councilmember Boyd stated about the RV park, but that is one of my top priorities.
Yes, ma'am. And council, one of the documents that you have with you, it's just stapled. It's about this thick. It's a list of all the unfunded requests. There's 100 or so of them. And the first page, I listed the first 7.
Where's that at, Mr. Kagan?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman
And
Gonzalez.
since there's well over 100, I only ranked the first 7, but
Thank you.
the issue that you're talking about, I had that ranked as number 1 on all the list of unfunded items. I figured after 7, it was useless to continue ranking them, but you can take a look. I don't think there's anything in any of those requests that are just nice to have or wants to. They're trying to address the situation of a growing community.
Mr. Cagle, you're my hero. I got to give you that. Thank you once again, our directors, executive directors, our finance department, and Mr. Kagan, your team, and also CC and our city secretary and staff, because it takes a lot of individuals to put all this together. You just in charge of it, but they played a major role in it. So I thank everyone for everything they have done. And Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you the mayor's hero.
When it comes to putting that as the number one priority when they get funded.
But if the money is not like for the third thing in line, and there is something else that's on here that could use the money, we will personally go in this lineup? We can't go out of number, out of sync?
You can go take number 99 if we have the money for it.
Council decision.
That's the issue, is finding, either you pull something out of the budget
Okay.
for that amount and insert something else, or you have a new source of revenue, or an increased source of revenue.
Okay, I was just wondering
Yes,
if there
ma'am.
was something after you took care of number one.
But that's unfunded.
It's unfunded.
I'm just-
It's not taken care of
If we
yet.
get money in the future, that may
Yeah.
be next year or 6 months, or it's not in this
It's not.
budget.
Oh,
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, I hope you get some money.
Yes, ma'am. What's
We
not
got
in
your
the,
facility now.
what's not in the budget is oftentimes just as important as what's in it.
It
Yes,
is.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone, Councilmember Sagara?
I don't have a question about the budget. I just wanted it, did you need a motion to set the August 1st public?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I was going to let him finish because according to my sheet, it comes
I just-
after C, which is Charlie. Yes, sir. So thank you for mentioning that, but I just wanted him to complete our next one, Charlie, and then according to our agenda, we will have the motion. Mr. Cagle?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the next thing that we
Capital
have,
improvement.
yes. And I will try to go a little faster. So back in 18, the council adopted the policy of a 5-year capital improvement plan. So every year, we drop off 1 year and add a year. Expenditures are items in excess of $100,000, equipment, vehicles, facilities, infrastructure. And the categories that we have are aviation, facilities, parks, recreation, drainage, transportation, water and sewer, technology, vehicles and equipment. And when you see the word fiscally constrained, that just means there wasn't money for that project. The last slide is a whole list of projects that are not funded. Now, where does the money come from the CIP? Primarily, it comes from excess fund balances from each of the funds, if they are there, or grants. As we know, on the aviation side, Mr. Wilson's done very well the past couple of years on grants in aviation. And we do pretty well every year in police and fire as well. Or we issue bonds, whether they're GO bonds, CO bonds, or revenue bonds. Now, this is a big picture summary. So for fiscal year '24, there's about 20 million or 21 million in capital improvement projects. And there are about 200 million in projects that are in some form of development right now. So this is the chart that I said I didn't have for water and sewer. This is the tax-supported debt. But you can see the CO issue that was just approved tonight, how that layers in over time. We issue 20-year debt. We pay it off pretty quickly. So the last payment on the debt that was approved tonight will occur in 2043. So we've separated from all of the blue is going to be previous issues, and then the red is the 23 issue. So you can see without increasing any revenues, the next time there's some capacity is 31, or you do something on the tax side to increase money to make the bars go higher. But just to back on the water and sewer side, it starts dropping off a fair amount quicker than it does on the tax side. Once again, we already looked at this, our tax-supported debt per capita. Then I'll go in alphabetical order. fairly quickly. There's about $8 million in projects in the '24 budget, and a lot of that are grants, or the passenger facility charge generates revenue for capital projects at the airport. We also can possibly get for the taxiway relocation, there's a couple of different grant opportunities for that one. The drainage summary, it's primarily drainage projects that will support all the road reconstruction projects that we've got going on. Many times, new construction or reconstruction has a significant drainage aspect to it. And so where there's drainage work involved, we're going to use the drainage fund to pay for that. It'll help our transportation dollars go further. Facilities, in '24, we've got some fire department improvements. The biggest one is ADA remediations, making ADA improvements across the city. This number will grow in the future, and it's going to be in our budget for several years to come. You see the remodeling projects at KCCC. We are adding one outdoor warning siren and replacing another one. It's on the drainage side, update our engineering design standards for drainage only. There's some improvements at the golf course, tee and bunker renovation, $173,000. That doesn't quite get it all the way there, but to finish the whole project with future expenditures of $86,000. Technology, a big one, replacing our utility collection customer information system, that's utility billing system. We're in the process right now of replacing our whole financial backbone system, our accounting system, our purchasing system, and after that's completed, we'll start on the utility collection side.
Mr. Kagan?
Yes, ma'am.
For the technology side with the utility collection building upgrade, can we not use funding from like Time Warner? Or is it totally two different things?
That's two different things. So you're talking about the revenue generated from the cable bills, and that can only be spent on a very narrow. We can use it on some technology in here, something to televise our meetings or televise city programs, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
This transportation summary seems light because most of the work is in the street maintenance fund. We are proposing some downtown streetscape programs that would have to come from TERS funding. Then most of these we've talked about. They're transfers from the operating budget to the CIP for vehicle replacement in all of our funds. We're a couple of years into our water meter replacement program, and sometime next year we ought to start reading the first series of water meters remotely, and very soon after that be in a place where all new construction then is read remotely. Replacing sewer lines and water lines are in there, and we're going to try to continue to increase that every year in the future. And then there's about $29 million in request of various funds that we didn't have enough money for. So nothing that you have to do tonight. You got the smaller budget document that you have there that's bound is the CIP, and it's got information on every project. It's either got a picture or a map and the description of what the project is. And so last date to make changes to this is August 22nd to remain on the schedule that we've been talking about. And I'm sorry, Ms. Cobb, I think I don't think it's shown here because it was already in the previous budget for the park maintenance facility. The revenue was added tonight for it.
So, Mr. Kagan, 22nd August is the last time that the council want to
Make changes to this document.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All righty. There's no questions, but I also just, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Cagle.
Yes, ma'am.
When I look at the Stone Tree Golf Course bunker and tee renovation, We had mentioned at one time, I'm thinking of an income increase by trying to do something to the house that was there. Because that'll be increased, that'll be money coming in if we can get it halfway renovated so we can have wedding receptions and the different things that we could have there. That's
Yes, ma'am.
money.
There's some possibilities there, but going along with that, there's a lot of expenses beyond the renovation, the operations and maintenance and running that kind of business. So you could definitely do it, but I wouldn't expect it's going to generate significant excess revenue for the golf course. But it is a good idea. There are issues there at the golf course and things we've talked about on radically enhancing the driving range and all the teaching elements out there. We have a great space. It's pretty plain, but there's a lot that could be done there. And also the one that's going to be staring us in the face fairly soon is all the irrigation system. It's very old. We've updated the central brain, the computer system, but all the pipes and the irrigation heads are very, very old, and they're going to have to be replaced, and that's a fairly significant expenditure that is coming down the line.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The fleet maintenance facility, fleet services facility, I understand we just allocated funding.
Yes,
or
sir.
found it through the CO we just passed. Where might that be in this lineup?
Well, I'll have to go back. Let me go back to the very first slide to show you. And Miranda, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to show up in prior year commitments, and it's going to be in the, let me find it. It's going to be in facilities.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. All right, Miranda, you want to help me out? It's right here. The certificates of obligation 2023, fleet facility, parks, PD storage, et cetera. There's the 32 million. And we already had it budgeted in the current year of 32 million, knowing that this CO sale was coming. So actually, this is that project's in the 23 budget. So that's why it doesn't show up over here in the 24 column.
Just like the park maintenance facility?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, another question, does that include the FBO as well as Skylark?
It does.
Gotcha, thank you.
And also, Mr. Kague, I want to thank the printing department, because we just received these today, so we hadn't had the opportunity to even see this budget today, but they had to put in some man-hours to get this to us.
Right, and so did finance. I mean, they worked.
And finance, thank you.
Yes, and the other thing to remember, our property taxes are major revenue, and this is still based on projections. We do not have the certified roll yet. We know we're pretty close to it, but we do not have the certified roll. And that's why we haven't given all the tax calculations that go along with that once we get the certified roll.
Okay, well, I thank you. Now we can go to our motion in a second.
Just one more question. Can I ask
Oh,
one
I'm
more?
sorry. Oh, you still have another question. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, this is
Councilmember
just,
Cigar.
Just to clarifying, because I know that, and I forgot to ask this on the previous slides, but you had mentioned that the fund balance was at 22% or something like that.
Yes, sir.
But then you said that when you were dealing with it, was at 30%. So I was trying to get clarification on that right there.
There were a number of different funds. So I'm thinking the one that was 30% was the hotel motel.
Oh, got it, got it.
The general fund was about 22 or 23, if I remember right.
So I know that anything above, is it 22, but that we put in
Yes,
capital
sir.
improvement, or is it 18?
22. 18's the floor.
The floor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if anything above 18 to 22 is what we put in capital improvement.
When we look at, when this year is audited, when we get the audit at the end of February, we'll be able to make that transfer, because there will be, it looks certain there will be excess revenues.
Yeah, that's good. Do we know how much it was for this year? Because I know this one you can.
Oh, well, I don't have the presentation. We could put the other presentation up, but it was about 7 million. They're looking it up, but that's the neighborhood that it was in.
No, that's good,
this
because
year. Yes,
usually
sir.
I kind of calculate maybe like 4 or 5 million, so that's a lot more.
And I don't expect that the end of this year will be that significant. It'll still be a good number, but it won't be 7 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you, Councilmember Sagara. And once Mayor Pro Tem, if there is no more questions after her, I will be coming back to you, Councilmember Sagara, to make that motion.
Mr. Cagle, you know I'm always looking for money.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when I look at the traffic signal infrastructure upgrade, does that mean the lights where people get tickets, will that light be working?
No, we're talking about the control center transportation.
Just the control center?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because when I see that, can those lights start working? We have increased accidents and all kinds of stuff. We can make some money.
Are you talking about the traffic signals?
Those lights that are over those tracks.
The cameras
cameras.
that was
Yes.
illegal.
Yeah, no, we can't give
That's illegal?
citations off of those.
Okay.
Any more questions, Mayor Pro Tem? If not, I will ask for a motion and second and consider the approval of setting the date of August 1st, 2023, to hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 annual budget. Councilmember Boyd then. Councilmember Boyd. Oh, did you have a question for Mr. Cagle? Because
I
your
didn't.
name is here.
No, I'm sorry, I was going to second the motion. I
Okay,
assumed
can we,
he was gonna do
no, okay, Councilmember Sagara or Mayor Pro Tem, either one of you. Okay,
Mayor, we would like to make I would like to make a motion and consider the approval of setting the date of August the 1st, 2023, to hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 annual budget.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Boyd?
Second.
All in favor, yes, all opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. Public hearing. Council, you have 3 times each to speak for 3 minutes, and this will be our last agenda item. Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready.
PH 23041, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance submitted by Mitchell and Associates, Inc. on behalf of Square Business Lifestyle Enterprises, LLC, case number Z23-16, to rezone approximately 0.268 acres being part of the H. O'Neill Survey, abstract number 645, from R2 Two-Family Residential District to R3F Multifamily Residential District. The property is locally addressed as 1715 18th Street, Killeen, Texas. The caption of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance amending the City of Killeen zoning ordinance by changing the zoning of approximately 0.268 acres being part of the H. O'Neill Survey abstract number 645 from R2 Two-Family Residential District to R3F Multifamily Residential District, providing a savings clause, providing for the repeal of conflicting provisions, providing for an effective date."
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Council, Mr. Rivera went over these slides last week. Would you like for him to go back over them? Okay. Is the applicant here? And if so, sir, would you like to speak? All right, oh, yes, sir, thank you. Public hearing open, public hearing closed. Can I get a motion from the council to approve PH-23-041? Councilmember Boyd.
I make a motion to approve PH-23-041.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I second.
All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Is any discussion? No. It's 5-0. Can I get Councilwoman Gonzalez a motion to adjourn?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion.
Councilmember Solomon? Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Solomon, can I get a second to that motion? All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Someone hadn't clicked. Councilman Solomon, could you click, please, sir? Motion carried 5-0. Meeting adjourned.